Chaf Gimel Adar Sheini, which we are kind of Chaf Gimel. I think this is the time when they began to practice erecting the Mishkan, and that's the day. And this Parsha Sunday was when the Shekhinah came down, the Yom HaShmini. So it's a very special time. Chaf Gimel Adar Sheini. We are on page 248 in Shaar Hayichud, chapter Chaf Aleph, and we are in the middle of Adar 26, which is in the Sefer HaMamarim Kontresim from the Mitzvah Rebbe, and we are on page Reish Lamed, and the line that starts Hashefa velo yoter. That is in the page Reish Lamed, the main paragraph, like a third from the bottom. The line that starts Hashefa velo yoter. We are discussing in Perek Chaf Aleph the inyan of Iskalelus, which is the main quality of the dynamic of the spheres and between the spheres of Atzilus. And we are focusing on it so much because we are part of Olam HaTikun. We are part of the world of rectification, where there has to be a blend when everything is becoming one, as Peggy is teaching us. That even the darkness, everything has to blend together, and it shouldn't be fragmented and viewed as separate from God. Even though our reality is such that everything feels separate. But our task is to reveal that everything is one. And the ability to actually experience and benefit and reflect the blending of the divine powers, even the opposite ones, all the spheros, the blending of the spheros, that gives us the koyach. We are made of that, and that gives us the koyach to create the tikkun in this world. That instead of experiencing all our life experiences and our external phenomena as separate, isolated, fragmented experiences, we are able to view it all as one and to see the truth and the integrity in it. And this is thanks to the world of Atzilus, because the world of Toh would not help us to do that. All right, so we spoke about the Gimel Kavin of the Netzalim of Spheros of Atzilus, Chacham on the right side, Chesed, Chochma, Chesed, and Netzach, and Baga from the left side. That's Bina, Gvura, and Hod, and Dati in the middle. The Das, Tiferes, Yesod, middle line. We said that Pnimius HaKeser, which is called Keser Shebekeser, is still one and not Nechlak LeGimel Kavin. It's not divided to 3 Kavin. And the beginning of the division to 3 Kavim begins with Chokhmah Shebekeser, with the Moichin Shebekeser. Because once you have Moichin can lean this way or that way. So now you can have Kavim. And in these 3 Kavim, it's possible, as we learn, to blend between the 2 extremes, the Yamin and the Small, and that is through Kava Emtzai, the Dati, the Kava Emtzai. And then the Rebbe spoke about the 2 Anafim, the Anafim of each Sphira, the Anafim of Chokhmah, the branches of Chokhmah, and the branches of Bina. The Chesed is an Anaf of Chokhmah, and Netzach is an Anaf, a branch that comes out of Chesed. And so too in the Kava Small. Bina is an Anaf. We learn more about it. Bina is an Anaf, is a branch. It's like a branch that comes out of a trunk, of a tree. So Bina is Gvura is a branch of Bina, and Hod is a branch of Gvura. And we need to understand what is a branch. the Paritcher, Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, has a biur, not a long biur, on chapter Chaf Aleph. So Yot Hashem will learn it after we finish the footnotes and reading it inside. We learn the biur of the Paritcher, who explains more what does it mean when Chesed is an anaf from Chochmah and Netzach is an anaf of Chesed. What does it mean that Gvura is an anaf of Bina? What does it mean that Hod is an anaf of Gvura? We need to understand it more. But that we'll do later. And what else did we learn so far? We learned that so the anaf is very separate. It's not identical with the trunk. The branch is not identical with the trunk. It's a different. It comes out of it, but it's separate from it. It's different, as we will learn. And we also have a process of how a certain midah leans to what the Rebbe is calling here davar murkav, that object that we are relating to. So it all begins in the person himself, and it's part of himself, like the seichel. The seichel is part of himself, and in the seichel he can already come to lean towards yes or no. But it's all about an in himself. As you go down, it's more and more about the object himself or the subject himself. And in order for the seichel, you don't need, as the Paritcher will explain, for the seichel, you don't need the subject to be there, because it's theoretical. It's a concept. For the midah to be born out of the seichel, you need already to relate to the person himself, or to the subject or the object himself. You need him there in order to really have a midah, have a feeling. And then the ultimate Islavshus in the murkav, in the subject itself, is through the nehi, through the last spheros, when it's totally not anymore, even not about the nature of the hashpara itself, rather is how to transmit it to the makabel in the best way. So it's very much now the center. The beginning was the center is the person himself, and what do I think about it? It's about me. And even the midah is what do I feel about it, which is more about you, but it's still me. How do I feel about it? But in terms of Netzach and Hod, it's all about you. How do I communicate in such a way that it should be miskabel in the best way in the makabel? So one is an anaf of it, and there is a real change as we're going down. It's a real a change. And that's what's called bedavar murkav. We said that in Atzilus, the spheros, the interinclusion of spheros comes along with this concept of murkav. Murkav means associated with something else, grafted onto something else. So we said that in Atzilus, the spheros go out of their essential state. In Tohu, they are in their essential state, in a point state, in essential state. In Atzilus, they are in a manner of ispashtus. They are extended out of their essence, of their essential state. And therefore there can be now murkav. There can be composed and inter-including something else. And relating to something else to the extent that they themselves make room for the makabel. And adjust to the makabel. The Rebbe mentioned that Ani bina li gvura, chokhma nota lechasadim, and bina minei dinim, minam dinim, midabrim. So chokhma leans to chasadim, to chesed, to kindnesses, to chesed, and bina from it dinim are issued. Bina is connected to gvuros and dinim. I did mention that I saw that really the Rebbe explained that it's spontaneous bina. Because really the pnimius of Bina is connected to Gvura. The omek of Bina is what? The pnimius of Bina is connected to Chokhmah. Because the omek of Bina is what? Is in Chokhmah, right? The omek of every sphera is the beetle to the sphera above it. Right? Remember omek, Chokhmah, ben Orech? Long time ago? So the omek, the pnimius of Bina is really Chokhmah. And therefore, the pnimius is Bina is also Chasadim. But the chitzonius of Bina is Vuros. It's Tzimtzumim. Anyhow. And then we went to look at Adar 26. And in the Kuntresim, we began at page Reish Chav Ches. And we learned about Yesod. We described the whole process of the Kava Emtsai. I'm not going to repeat everything. The Kava Emtsai of Das, which is the scale, the way between Chesed and Gvura in the Seichel, in the Moichin. And then we have the Tiferes, which is, again, there's a Shikul, there's again weighing, going to yes and no, and yes again, and no again, and yes again, and no again. And the scale goes up and down, and up and down, and up and down, and each one there's another bureau, and another bureau, until a resolution is done on Tiferes, between the right blend between Chesed and Gvura, or whatever it is. And then there is the Moznei Tzedek, which is the Netzach and Hod, which is the final, and not only final, but the Rebbe said is the last stage of the process, which is going from the theoretical to the personal to the practical. At the practical stage, which is the last stage of Ashpa, there is a new reassessment and weighing that needs to be done, and does happen. And it's called Moznei Tzedek, like a righteous scale that actually measure exactly what would be the right proportion between different options in order for the Mekabel to receive the Ashpa in the best way, and that the Ashpa should be L'Toiva and not the opposite. And again, there is each time, and the Rebbe will explain also, that each time, especially towards the end, the Ashpa becomes very intense, and there is a need to mashpia. It becomes like it wants to burst out. Why? Because the whole process of coming down through the process of scale, of weighing, of yes, no, Chesed Gevura, there's constant resistance. Every time you have a no, you have to overcome the no in order to create a new yes. So you are constantly dealing with resistance. And that resistance, like if you put resistance to flowing water, you know that the water that piles up, becomes more energetically intense and wants to really flow more intensely. And that's when it's able to. And therefore the end of the Ashpa is always like, even physiologically, it's like an arrow in order to create the fruit. All right. But it's always mityashev bedato. Always a person has to settle in his mind. It's a process. Ashpa is a process of yes and no, and yes and no, yes and no, and each time to deal with davar ve'ipucho, to one thing and its opposite. While I'm weighing whether to have a yes, whether to mashpia or to hold back, whether to give myself or to hold myself back, and how much to give and how much to hold back. And this chesed and gvura. So now we are on page Reish Lamed, and next page we'll finish this footnote. Bezrat Hashem. So the line that starts Hashefa velo yoter. So now we are at the end of the process of Ashpa, which means the Gilui to the Mekabel, the level of Netzach and Hod, and the ultimate decision, which really is the ultimate decision and final resolution of all the weighings on the level of Moichin, through Das, on the level of midos, through Tiferet, and now Yesod makes the final decision of how to express practically everything that began in your mind and continued in your heart, and now you want to express in action or in speech, which is also considered a small action. So Yesod is considered bar, which means in Aramaic outside of the body, because it relates to the Zulas, it relates to the other, and therefore the assessment is only depending on the keli of the Makabel, how much he can and how he can absorb. כי אינו רק לצורך שפע זולתו. The only point that this point of Yesod is focusing on the Zulas, on משפיע to the other, הצריך לשיעור קבלת זולתו המקבל בלבד. So the focus is how and what shefa is exactly needed in order for the Zulas, the other, to receive it properly. וכמו בשעה שבה האדם לגמר המעשה דמשא ומתן, אחר כל העצות שבנפשו ומוחו וליבו, איך לעשותו, שאז לא נשאר כאן רק דבר אחד, הנוגע רק לעניין גוף המעשה לבד ולא יותר. So like a person, one of the examples, the Rebbe gave two examples in the previous page. One example was the weighing whether a person should get into or do a certain deal and get into a certain business. And the other mashal was the weighing back and forth of a mashpia, of a teacher, how to mashpia his knowledge to the talmid, to the student, to the disciple. So, in the first example, when a person, כמו בשעה שבה אדם לגמר המעשה למשא ומתן, when a person comes to the end of the process of making a deal, after all the eitzos שבנפשו ומוחו וליבו, after all the process of ideas, yes and no, should I not, do I like it, do I not, it's me, it's not me, I feel like yes, I feel like no, whatever, all the process, and now, and including, and if yes, what would I have to do, and what it will necessitate, all my process of thought, of feelings, of yes and no, shikul das. Then the only thing that is left after this whole complex process is the guf ha'maisa levad velo yoter. Now everything is just goes to the back burner and is like the backdrop for everything. And now the person is focusing on the actual act, what he needs to do to complete the deal. And it will be all kind of physical things that he has to do. He will have to push some buttons and create some links and whatever he will need to do, and to connect with his bank and all these things to do the practical things. It will all come down to very specific acts that will be taken after a whole complex weighing of yes or no. וזהו הטעם שבחינת יסוד נקרא לבר מגופה. That's why יסוד is called out in Kabbalah, outside of the body, לפי שכל בחינת המזיגוס והאסקללוס שבדעת ותפארת ונצח והוד, הכל בכלל גופה הן. The whole process of all the mezigos v'iskalelus, all the blendings and interinclusions and the decisions that have to be made, how much yes and how much no, how much chesed, how much gvura, that takes place in das first, in my thought process first, and then in tiferet, in terms of my love and my hate, and then in netzach v'hod, in terms of how much I want to give and how I want to give and how to give it, and everything is still considered gufa. Everything is still considered the body. It's the person himself. היינו שכל זה הוא עדיין בעצם המשפיע לצורך עצמו. All the assessment until Yesod is really for the sake of the משפיע himself. What he thinks, what he feels, what he wants from this, what he wants to give, it's all about him. ואין זה עדיין רק קבלת המקבל לבד. So until Yesod, it's not only about the makabel, it's about the mashpia. Shehu lebar migufa, the makabel is outside of the body. And Yesod is too. Why? מאחר שמתיישב בעצמו עדיין איך ומה להשפיע כולו. The Netzach and Hod is, even though it's already about the השפעה, but it's still the person who מתיישב בעצמו עדיין איך ומה להשפיע. A person is really מתיישב, counseling, so to speak, with himself. Okay, so if I love what I want to give, how I want to give it, it's still about me and how I want to express myself. אבל בחינת יסוד הרי הוא בחינת המשכה מיוחדת לאחר כל המזיגות לחסד וגבורה שבעצם המשפיע. יסוד is a special המשכה, and unique המשכה. After all the mezigos, all the blendings of chesed and gvura in the mashpia himself, Yesod is רק כדי צורך שפע הטוב והערה לזולתו המקבל לבד. Yesod is only for the sake of good, the shefa to be transmitted well to the other, the recipient. So it's only about transmitting the shefa to the recipient. Im kein הרי זה לבר מגופה. And therefore, spiritually or emotionally, it's לבר מגופה. It's outside of himself, of the body. לצורך זולתו לבד. It's only for the sake of the מקבל, of the recipient. ואף על פי כן, nevertheless, מתאחד עם גופה. The Yesod is united with the guf. It's not disconnected. It's connected to the body. V'nikra siyuma de gufa. In Aramaic, it's called the siyum of the body, the end of the body. So, like in case of the male organ, or the female as well, but Yesod is more representing the male organ. It's the inyan of the siyum of the body, of the end of the body. Ki hu siyum akava emtzai, because Yesod is the end of the middle line. The das v'tiferet, of das and tiferet, dati, umehem umekabel, and from them he receives, כמו שכתוב, as he said in Bereshit, ייקבעו המים כולו. The waters should all gather, ותראה היבשה, and the dry land should be revealed. אל מקום אחד, all the מים, all the השפעה should gather to one place, כנ"ל ודל. So we see that in Yesod, all the spheres, it's not only that Yesod is another memutza, it's another intermediary, it's another scale, that holds them both. No, in Yesod, all the energy of all the spheres are what is called in modern Hebrew mitnakez, nikuz, which means they are all gathering. Yikavu hamayim. They are all gathering into Yesod. All the ashpa'ah from all the spheres. It's very intense. והנמשל מכל זה יובן למעלה בבחינת יסוד העליון. And that will help to. We went a little bit off discussing Yesod. Yesod is not the topic of Perek Chaf Aleph necessarily, but it helps us because it helps us to understand the middle line and what it does in terms of the two extreme lines. But in any case, just remember that we are reading a piece of a Maimon that discusses other things. In this case, Yesod in specifically. So, but we are still learning about it. ונמשל מכל זה יובן למעלה בבחינת יסוד העליון. The analog will be understood regarding the יסוד למעלה, the ספירת היסוד הפצילוס, שהוא בחינת צדיק, is called צדיק, like יוסף הצדיק. מידת היסוד is connected with the term tzaddik. Tzaddik yesod olam. The tzaddik is the yesod of the world, is the foundation of the world. Or it's called chei olamim, chei almin. Chei olamim, chei almin is also yesod. Kanal. Shehu ikar mashpia lebchinat malchus. Because yesod is the main mashpia to the aspect of malchus. Nikra bechinat makor lekol hamekablim. That it is the source of all the for all the recipients. שבו כלול מכל בחינת מזיגוס והסקללוס שונות, because in it, in Yesod is included all the blendings and the interinclusions, the כל האורות העליונים, of all the divine lights, הכלולות בקו האמצעי, that are included in the middle line of דאס תפארת דתי. דהיינו, כל בחינת אורות ומויכין עליונים, all the divine and the upper lights and moichin, the chokmah and bina of Atzilus. That means that Yesod will include all the errors of moichin, of chokmah and bina. And we know that just as everything that in our life is pnimius and chitzonius, so too the sefirot. And as we said many times, the moichin are the pnimius and the midos are the chitzonius. So, what is now mitnaked, what is yikavu hamayim, what is now gathering, all gathered in Yesod, all the divine oil, starting with the Chabad, with the Chokhmah and Bina of Atzilus, the way they are included of Chesed and Gvura, yes or no, through Das, and Nimshachim b'bchinas hadas lezo, and then he goes down to the midos. Ubchinas hadas kolelam b'chama upanim shonim, and das also will include chesed and gvura in many ways. Das will include chesed and gvura in many ways, in many proportions. Sai bekamus, sai be'echus. How much and in what kind? Ad sheba le'ofen miyuchad. So all this process of all the divine lights and the way they interact with each other and the proportion between each one and the opposite ones especially and so on, everything is gathering into Yesod עד שבא לאופן מיוחד until it's all focused in one unique way, והוא בחינת ההכרעה המיוחדת. It is a specific, unique resolution to each dynamic of a process of dynamic of the spheres, מדבר והיפוכו. So in Yesod will be a final הכרעה. הכרעה means, I don't know what the word for it in English. הכרעה means like, when, for instance, it's a decision, but it's not only a decision. It's overpowering. It's like when poor people are, let's say, who will knock down the hand of the other one? Who is the machriya? Who will knock down the other? The machriya means also the one that overpowers, the one that brings it all down to a final. It's not just a decision. It is a very powerful process that ends up with a final sack, with a final akhra'ah. It's like a judge. When a judge makes a decision after all the arguments between the sanegor and the kategor, In any case, the accuser and the defender. So that means that Yesod includes כל בחינת אוירוס ומויכין עליונים לחוכמה ובינה ובצילוס שכלולים מחסד וגבורה ונמשכים מבחינת הדעת לזו ובחינת הדעת and the דעת כוללם בכמה אופנים and the דעת includes and blends the chesed and gvura in many ways עד שבא and the shikul the weighing is done in many, in quality and quantity, many details and aspects, until בא לאופן מיוחד, until it comes to a specific, unique decision, הכרעה מיוחדת, מדבר והיפוכו, that it's really made of something and its opposite, and there is a final decision, how much of each, and how, כנ"ל במשל. וממנו, next page, נמשך לבחינת המידות עליונות, חסד, דין, חולו, and then from the da'at of the moichin it comes down into the midos. Now it's not about a concept, it's about a אהבה or יראה, גם כן בבחינת או attraction or rejection, גם כן בבחינת הכרעה שבמידו, שהוא בחינת תפארת, זה זו. Also has to be a הכרעה, a decision, פסק. How it will be between the two, and that's done in תפארת, ומשם נמשך לבחינת נצח והוד. And from there it goes on to נצח והוד, שנקראים שחקים. נצח והוד נקראים שחקים. שחקים means two things in Hebrew. One is the height of the sky, shamayim, the height of shamayim is shchakim, but shchakim, lishchok means to grind, very finely. So netzach, to grind finely, lishchok, to finely grind, like like you put the kernels between the two heavy stones, then it's one, the avanim shochakos. They are grinding, finely grinding. There's litchon. Litchon means to grind, and lishchok means to finely grind. Even more than to litchon. Shchakim. So why netzach called shchakim? Sheshochakim v'tochanim, because these are two expressions of grinding. They are finely grinding and they are tochanim, and they are chopping, grinding and chopping, and two expressions of grinding. Tochanim is general grinding and shochakim is finely grinding. Shezeu b'chinat klayos yoatzos. These are the advising kidneys, ech להשפיע בכמה מזיגos מדבר והיפוכו, and the kidneys are weighing and giving an advice how to mashpia by weighing one thing and its opposite, yes and no, עד שנמשך בבחינת יסוד שנקרא צדיק עליון, until it all comes and gathers into Yesod, which is called the upper righteous one, the tzaddik, the upper tzaddik, the divine tzaddik. וזה שכתוב ושחקים יזלו צדק, and this is the pasuk says that shchakim yizlu tzedek, that the heavens will drip righteousness. So that means how the ashpah goes from netzach and hod, which are called shchakim, to yesod, which is called tzaddik, and the ashpah is tzedek. שבשם אין השפע רק לצורך המקבל, and there in יסוד the שפע, the השפעה is only for the sake of the receiver, שהוא בחינת המלכוס. That's the מלכוס, אחר כל המזיגות והאיסקללוס, the מויכין או מידוס שבזו. After all the blendings and the interinclusions of the מויכין and the midos in the midos. ועל כן נקרא לבר מגופה, and therefore יסוד is called outside of the body, the זו. Body is זו, and יסוד goes outside of זו, אף על פי שמקבל מדעת ותפארת, even though it receives from דעת and from תפארת, but its focus is on the outside, on the מקבל, ונקרא סיומה דגופה כנ"ל ודל, and it's called the end of the body, holistically, סיומה דגופה. Okay. So that helps us a little bit to understand the blending, the yichudim between. This continues much more about Yesod and the functioning of Yesod, but that's not the topic right now. We are going back to our Maimon. Questions or comments so far?
Yeah, I have a question, Hannah.
Okay.
So what happens if a person cannot decide? They just cannot make a decision. Where is the bliss over there?
It's an issue of midas hanetzach that is coming out of the need, the insecurity and lack of bitachon. That things will come out the way they're supposed to come out, and there's such a need, a desperate need to control the outcome of the decision, that the person cannot make a decision. So the person has to increase the let go, let's take a step back out of the whole thing, and readjust in terms of reconnecting with the trust that the process of decision making is also an expression of one's relationship with Hashem, and Hashem will make sure that the right decision, bitachon, and the right decision will happen, and I should allow it to happen by trusting that everything should work out well.
So when you say it's a netzach,
sometimes, yeah. Netzach is means two things. Netzach is the Netzach means to ability to really push through and to overcome resistance, but it also means complete trust, and they are connected. If you are not completely trusting, then you are working with your external kochos that are basically beginning from your mind. And your mind is the tool that you use desperately, your thought, and to try to control the situation. So it will be limited, and your kochos will be limited. But if you operate from bitachon, which means you're not limiting yourself just, this is what the Sheini that the Rebbe was speaking about, that you're using your mind, you're using your thoughts, but you're not using it as a limiting tool. Rather as a tool that will express the trust that you have, that your soul that is part of God would know and knows already what the decision is and what the right thing is. Then your thought will reflect your kochos apnimim, your kochos na'alamim, your inner kochos and your inner ability to see the truth. And that's from there a decision can be made in the best way. Bitul is a avoidance that needs to be done all day long. Not bitul means surrendering to someone stronger than you that you have to admit that can knock you down. It's not bitul. It's just a mental awareness, kind of mental clearing that we need to do constantly within ourselves to make sure that we are tzino, that we are like a pipe, but that we not obscure the flow through our own personal issues and insecurities and need to control and contract or whatever, or disconnect and because the nature of the being in this physical materialistic world, humri, is that it distracts us from being connected with our essence. It takes us away. The engagement with activities, whatever they are, it has the tendency to disconnect us from our essence. And therefore there has to be a constant conscious clearing attempts made to free ourselves from our personal issues that are making that flow heavy and compromised. And that requires constantly surrendering, and a good surrendering to Hashem, like constantly reminding myself, that's like Shema, we're going, we have this, we have that, we have to, there's important issues, not very important issues, we have little important issues, we have no important issues, blah, 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 everybody has the script. And then you say Shema, and you're like, Hashem Echad, there's nothing, Enod Milvad, nothing else. It is nothing else, it's just oneness. So that's like the clearing, all of a sudden my story quiets down and it disappears in the oneness of Hashem. So we have to do this bitul, to remind ourselves that everything, including this drama of the moment, it's just subsumed in the oneness of the infinite. And there we are not so stuck in our need to make sure that if I don't make the right decision, Hashem, the world will fall apart.
It's interesting that when you really trust in Hashem, really, so whichever decision you're going to make is going to be the right one. Because Hashem is going to make either decision work for you. This whole conversation doesn't even matter.
And actually, the more you trust, the less you even have deep doubts what to do. The easier the knowing of the decision comes.
Right,
and the more you trust, the more Hashem will make the decision for you. If we don't trust, you say, okay, you want to trust yourself, go ahead. And then we go, but if we trust Hashem, and He says, okay, you trust me, I'll make the decision for you.
Right?
Yeah. So that bitul, that clearing has to be a ongoing thing, that peaks, in the Shema and, in davening that we can really focus, but it should be done, the Shema should be extended to the whole day. Bezrat Hashem.
But it says in Tanya, Parak Lamed Daled.
Excuse me?
It's in Tanya, in Yaakov Hashem Lo Od.
Yeah. Yaakov Hashem Lo Od, yeah. Very good. Alright, let's weiter. Next time in Yesod Hashem, we will finish Os Chaf Aleph, talk a little bit about Gvule Alachson, Yud Beis Gvule Alachson, all the kavim of Iskalelus of the 6 midos that are described as a cube, Lemala, Lemata, in the 4 corners of the world, of Safon, Darom, Mizrach, and Ma'arav, and then Mala and Mata. We'll discuss that, and then all the kavim that are connecting all the points of the cube are altogether 12, and these are the 12 blending dynamics between the spheres, that from them come out the 12 Shvatim, the 12 Chodashim, the 12 Mazalos, and the 12 oxen that were carrying the big basin in the Mishkan, from which the Kohanim were washing their hands and feet. So that we will discuss next time, Bezrat Hashem.